before you sit down, we'll go back on the record because I have to swear you in. So put whatever down you need to put down, and then if you can raise your right hand, you solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the testimony you will give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right, you can be seated. And just for the record, could you state your name and spell it for us, please?
Matt Chason, Mattchason.
Do you go by Matt or Matthew? Or
Either
both?
one, Matt.
Okay, because I've seen both, that's why I'm asking.
Oh, yeah, either one.
And just, Attorney Maloney's going to be handling this witness, so,
Okay, for when you do cross-examination?
yeah, or objections or whatever.
Okay.
He will be handling this witness.
Okay, you can go ahead and begin with your questioning.
Thank you. Do you work for MPS?
Yes.
And in what capacity do you work for MPS?
My title is the Senior Director of the Office of Accountability and Efficiency.
And what does that mean?
It is an independent office that reports directly and only to the board of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
Okay, and what is your role within that? Is it an office or your office?
It is an office, yeah. As the Senior Director, I lead the office.
Okay. And does the office have policies and procedures that it's required to follow?
That's correct.
Okay, and where do those policies and procedures come from?
They are either administrative policies or board rules or board policies as set by the district.
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
As set by the district.
As set by the district, okay. Is that, when you say the district, who do you mean?
The board approves all policies and procedures that are published by the district.
Okay, and it's fair to say that you do not report to the superintendent directly?
That is correct.
Okay, and in fact, that's part of the purpose of your office?
Arguably so, yes.
Okay, why?
The structure of the organization sets us apart from reporting to the administration led by the superintendent.
Can you be terminated by the superintendent?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Do you know who can terminate you?
The board can terminate me, I believe, with a majority vote in public forum.
Congratulations. Okay. So it's fair to say that your office is insulated from the rest of MPS management, is that correct?
That's a fair statement.
Okay. Is that always the case?
Did you ask if that has always been the case?
No, I'm sorry. Is it always the case that your office is insulated from MPS management?
Generally speaking, yes. At least from oversight or, to your earlier question, disciplinary.
Okay. And does MPS have parallel investigatory offices?
Can you clarify that question?
Yes. If I, as an MPS employee, if I want to make a complaint against another MPS employee, who can I go to?
There are avenues set forth in policy and there are avenues set forth in the employee handbook.
And what are those avenues?
Under the employee handbook, there is the opportunity to raise a discriminatory harassment or bullying concern to HR. There's the opportunity to raise, I think it's just a general grievance in response to a disciplinary matter to HR. And I believe there's sort of a catch-all that can also be raised to HR. And under policy, there is, very quickly off the top of my head, a whistleblower policy, which enables an individual to bring a concern to the superintendent, the board president, myself as the manager of the Office of Accountability and Efficiency, and I believe in an implied escalatory fashion to the board clerk.
Okay. And do you know the acronym ERAD within MPS?
Employee Rights Administrative Division?
That's fair. My question is, are you just aware of that, what that body is?
Yes.
Okay, what is that body, please?
I believe that's one of the divisions or departments within the Office of HR to handle employee concerns.
Okay. And if an employee files a concern with ERAD, what are the possible outcomes of an ERAD investigation, if you know?
My understanding is that they will conduct an investigation, and then dependent upon that outcome, that can result in recommendations for corrective actions based on the nature of the concern. I believe there's a status of open monitoring and compliance with whatever those recommendations are. And then I think it approaches a closed status. That's my understanding.
Okay. So it's fair to say that the ERAD is one avenue of making complaints to of discrimination at MPS. Is
That's
that correct? Okay, and you're also another avenue for making complaints at MPS?
We are another avenue. The policy states violations of policy. I can't quote exactly off the top of my head, but it is another avenue in which someone can raise a concern.
Okay, but ERAD, they cannot, do they have the ability to discipline, if you know?
I don't know if ERAD by themselves have the authority to discipline an employee exclusively in their area. I don't know.
Okay. And does HR have other reporting structures to your knowledge?
I don't know, and I believe recently there was a reorganization. I'm sorry, I don't know.
I'm sorry, because that's, just to be clear, because these names shift, I think that's what you're trying to explain. My question really is I understand that there is one group that's employee rights and another group that's in HR. There's two groups within HR, right? And one only has the ability to recommend counseling, and the other one can discipline. Is that your understanding?
I'm just going to check quickly the foundation.
You can answer if you know the answer.
I don't know the answer.
Okay. But do you believe that there are more than one reporting structures within HR itself?
Yes.
Okay. And so the part that you don't know is what the disciplinary outcomes of the more than one reporting structures is that right?
Yes, or at least the clear authority to discipline. I'm not sure in which avenue that resides.
Okay. And do you know who Yashika Spears is?
Yes, I do.
Who is Yashika Spears?
I believe she is an investigator within HR in the employee rights area.
Okay. Employee rights, that's ERAD, as far as you know?
I believe so.
I understand. Thank you. Have you ever had any discussions with Yashika Spear about any investigation that she's conducted?
Yes.
Okay, what conversations have you had with Yashika Spear about investigations that she's conducted?
I'm going to check the whole broad. We're talking anytime he's been out there, and then it's immaterial, irrelevant, waste of time, because we're here on directly holding complaints.
Yeah, you need to be more specific. What complaint are you talking about?
Fair enough. Can you repeat the question, please?
What conversations have you had with Jessica Spears about investigations that she's conducted?
Okay. Have you had discussions with Yashika Spears about more than one complaint?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta get more specific. Is there a specific complaint that you want him to talk about?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what those are. So that's where we're at. So I'm asking the broad question of whether or not he's done that, and now we're trying to figure out which complaints he's talked to her about.
I guess, have you had conversations with her about investigations?
Yes.
And do you know which investigations you talked to her about?
Certainly the one in front of us today.
Okay, you can continue.
Great. Are there other investigations that you discussed with her?
Yes.
Okay, and did they take place in 2019, for example?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that work you did to come to that answer. Let me ask that another way. Do you know of any other complaints within curriculum and instruction that you discussed with Yashika Spears?
Just quickly, sorry, are we still talking only 2019? Or anytime?
Anytime.
And then the check is broad, okay?
Yeah, let's focus it on the 2019 period.
I don't recall.
Okay. And that's because you don't recall whether or not they happened, or you don't recall whether or not they took place in 2019?
Either.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you. Sir, there's no wrong answer that you can give here as long as it's true. Does that sound right to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. What was the nature of your discussion with Yashika Spears about Dr. Garcia-Joven's complaint?
I know for certain I had a conversation with her, to the presiding body. This is a conversation I recall in 2021.
That's fine. If
Okay.
it's about this complaint, about allegations that happened in 2018 and 2019,
There's arguably intersectionality.
well, let's focus in on conversations you had with her about allegations he made from 2018 and 2019.
I don't recall if I had a conversation with Ms. Yashika Spears or a Therese Freiberg in 2019 regarding the Garcia-Joven neighborhood.
Okay, what was the nature of the conversation?
It was a inquiry into the status of his, it was an inquiry into the status of his complaint that he had raised in that area.
And why did you come to discuss Dr. Garcia-Joven's complaint with Yashika Spears or Teresa Freiberg?
Yeah, he had approached me, I believe in September of 2019.
Okay. And what do you mean by approach?
He had scheduled a meeting with me and raised a concern with me personally that was generally twofold. One, that he had raised a concern in HR and he hadn't heard anything back. And secondly, that he felt that having raised that concern, the individuals that he had named as concern were now retaliating against him for having done so.
Okay. And when you say raise a concern, is that synonymous with filing a complaint or something else?
Yes.
Okay. So you won't mind if I say file a complaint going forward?
Not at all.
Thank you. So he filed a complaint with you after he filed a complaint with ERAD, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And you know that because you've seen the complaint he filed with ERAD or something else?
Yes, I believe Mr. Garcia-Joven either shared with me at that time or at some later date that complaint that he filed with HR did become available to me.
Did HR send you anything in relation to this complaint?
They did send me information. I know that in February of 2020, they had provided me with documentation related to, this is my term, not theirs, determination and some subsequent counseling that had taken place with the employees in question.
Okay, and we're talking Vicki Brown-Gurley and Dr. Garcia-Joven or something else? Sorry, scratch that. Who are the employees in question, if you know?
I believe the employee's named in the complaint that was submitted to HR was Vicki Brown-Gurley and Angela Ford.
Okay. What was the nature of the complaint that Dr. Garcia-Joven filed with you?
He was concerned that having raised his concern with HR that things had gotten worse. I believe the word he used specifically was retaliatory from the two individuals that he named in his complaint.
Okay. And specifically, he was complaining to you about retaliation from Vicki Brown-Gurley.
And Angela Ford.
And Angela Ford, okay. And when you say worse, that indicates in my mind a situation where there's one situation that's, for lack of a better word, bad, and then now it's progressed into something that's worse. Is that your understanding?
That was my interpretation of my conversation with Mr. Hogan, yes.
Okay, and did you investigate Dr. Garcia-Joven's complaint?
I did not.
What does that mean?
In my judgment, based on the facts and circumstances known to me at that time, they did not present a compelling reason to supersede or interrupt what was an open and active investigation being conducted within the provisions of the employee handbook regarding this concern.
So when did you make that determination?
I think within my first meeting or subsequent meeting with Mr. Hogan.
Before or after you talked to Yashika Spears?
I don't recall. Probably before.
Okay. And to be clear, it could have been Yashika Spears or Therese Freiberg.
To be clear, yes.
Okay, and I haven't asked this question yet, so bear with me. Do you know who Therese Freiberg is?
Yes.
Who is Therese Freiberg?
I believe she was recently appointed to the director of the area.
Okay, and to be clear, do you know who she was in 2019?
I don't remember her title exactly at that time, I'm sorry.
Okay, and then for us who aren't in MPS, can you explain to me what your understanding of Teresa Freiberg's relationship to Yashika Spears was in 2019?
I believe her supervisor at that time.
And direct supervisor or something else?
I believe direct.
Okay. And is it fair to say that partially the reason for your confusion is that there are frequently title changes and descriptions of office changes at MPS?
One question, vague. What do you mean by frequent? You mean-
I'm sorry, say that loud again.
What do you mean by frequent?
Can you specify what you mean by frequent?
Sure. Do you understand, how about more than once every 5 years?
I consider that my confusion presently is related to very recent organizational changes.
And when did that happen?
I think in the last year or two.
Okay, and who made those organizational changes?
I believe they're related to budget restructuring.
I'm sorry, who made those decisions?
They would have been organizational changes that resulted through, well, I believe it was through the budget.
But the budget's not a person.
Correct. It would have been a proposed budget from the superintendent that the board adopted.
I appreciate that thorough answer. Okay. So, why would you have, after you had decided not to interfere with the ERAD process, why would you have gone to Yashika Spears?
In my initial discussion with Mr. Garcia-Joven, I had asked for his permission to make inquiries into the status. One, to just determine whether or not there was any unreasonability based on what he had communicated to me as a duration of time that, having submitted, he had not heard anything. And secondly, to ask, after getting his permission, to share anything he had shared with me with that area too, to make sure that they had any applicable information they needed to conduct a thorough investigation.
So, did you supplement the ERAD investigation?
My recollection is if Mr. Garcia-Joven shared anything with me that he had not shared with ERAD, that I passed that on to them.
Okay, so for example, that the situation was getting worse.
Correct.
Did you pass that on to them?
Yes.
And you're sure about that?
I know that in December of 2019, I had a conversation with Mr. James Gordon, in which I shared with him that Mr. Garcia-Joven had approached me and said that things were not getting better, and I shared that detail with him in a meeting, I believe, in December of 2019.
I appreciate that. At that time, do you know what James Gordon's position was? Or let's put that another way. Do you know what his relationship was, if any, to Therese Freiberg or Yashika Spears?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you believe him to be in a higher supervisory position than Therese Freiberg at that time, or something else?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall the reason that you went to Mr. Gordon, was it?
Yeah,
And can you spell that, please, for clarification?
I believe it's Gorton.
Yep.
Okay.
And then to answer your question, I think it's because during the holidays that he was available and Ms. Freiberg was not.
Okay. But it's, so then it might be fair to say that they're in the same office. Does that sound right at that time?
I don't recall providing any. I don't recall providing any monitoring update or report to the board that we took upon under our own discretion.
Okay. Did the board instruct you to take any monitoring or reporting to them?
I don't recall if there was any specific policy.
No, so I appreciate that, but what I'm asking you is, were you directed by the board at any time in the last 5 years to review the policies and procedures of HR?
Not in such a broad fashion.
Okay, how about in a less broad fashion?
Object to some of the questions vague.
Mr. Maloney, I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
I said object to the questions vague and ambiguous. I don't know what you're asking.
You can answer if you understand the question.
Could you repeat the question?
But about in a less broad fashion. Let's see. Appreciate that, but what I'm asking you is, were you directed by the board at any time in the last 5 years to review the policies and procedures of HR? Answer not in such a broad fashion. Okay, what about in a less broad fashion?
Occasionally, committees will make asks of us to do reviews of things that are, for example, I can recall in the last 5 years, we were asked to provide a report on, for example, the LTE, which is the limited term engagement process, and we provided that report to the board. And that's arguably an HR-related function.
Okay. Do you compile any data of the outcome of complaints?
Can you be more specific on the complaints?
Do you compile data as part of your office work?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And as part of those compilations, do you compile any complaints as part of your office work?
Yeah, we do provide monthly reports to the board about the number and types of projects that we've completed in the reporting period.
Okay. And so projects, you're talking about investigation of complaints or something else?
What we report includes that.
What does a project mean to you?
An ask for a deliverable to be completed by a certain time frame.
Okay, and does the board as a whole give you those instructions?
Occasionally, but sometimes we get asked from individual board members, sometimes we get asked simply from the administration to assist with projects. There can be a number of inputs into an ask for a project.
Describe what kind of projects the administration asks you to complete.
They can be assistance in a process improvement project, for example, or assistance in completing the work of a resolution that the board had passed. Those could be some examples.
Okay. And what about individual board members? What kind of projects do they assign to you?
Yeah, they can reach out and they can ask for follow-up for data, for summaries of what is available district data. We have the discretion within our office to advise them that we won't complete them, at which time they can bring them to the board and have the board direct the work, but they are authorized to make asks on their own, individual board members.
Individual board members can make, can request your office to do things, but you can refuse. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Yes,
Okay. And again, these are individual board members, not a quorum of the board or the board itself?
correct.
Okay. And the projects they assign you, those involve doing work, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now we're just going to go back a little bit. When we're talking about compiling data, is it true that you're compiling data or complaints from your office and reporting those to the board?
Yes, the number of completed complaints, those do get reported monthly to the board.
Now I understand. Okay. So then if we can just, do you know whether or not you compile any data on the HR department's complaints to HR?
I do not compile complaint data from HR.
Okay, do you know if HR compiles any data on complaints that are filed with it?
I don't know.
Okay. And based on, or have you ever been tasked with reviewing the policies and procedures of HR such that you learn what the outcome of their complaints are?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Now, in 2019, were you conducting any other investigations in the curriculum and instruction department?
I don't recall.
Okay. And is that, you don't recall whether you're conducting any other investigations in a curriculum instruction in 2019?
Correct.
Okay. Is it possible that you were?
It's possible.
Okay. Do you believe that you were conducting any investigations into curriculum instruction in 2018?
I don't recall, but it's possible.
Okay. Do you recall doing any investigations other than Dr. Garcia-Joven into the curriculum instruction program in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I'm going to object to the question of mistaken testimony. You testified that he investigated Garcia-Joven's complaint.
Yeah, I guess we haven't established that yet.
In fact, he testified that he didn't investigate it.
I guess, did you investigate any complaint made by Mr. or Dr. Garcia-Joven in 2019?
No, we did not conduct any investigation.
Well, but you did decide not to go forward with an investigation, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, but to do that, presumably, to make that determination, presumably you gathered facts, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And during those facts, with the fact gathering, did you investigate whether those facts were true or false?
I did not.
Okay, did you compile any other facts other than what Dr. Garcia-Joven gave to you?
Yes, in so much as anything that would support what was the current status of Mr. Garcia-Joven's complaint.
Okay, so it's fair to say that you didn't conduct a formal investigation after you made your decision, but you did investigate facts prior to making that decision. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Is an investigation, do you consider that a deliverable?
Yes.
Okay, and so there would be a beginning and an end to an investigation, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so, in fact, there was a resolution to Dr. Garcia-Joven's complaint with you, isn't that right?
When you say resolution, can you provide more clarity?
Well, your office decided that the investigation would end, isn't that right? Or you would take no further action?
We were not going to conduct an investigation. I did encourage Mr. Garcia-Joven though to continue to reach out to keep me apprised of that status of his investigation, mostly on the basis that he communicated concern that it was taking on an unreasonable amount of time.
The investigation was by ERAD?
Correct.
Okay. Not your investigation?
Correct.
Okay. And to be clear, he reached out to you that the ERAD investigation was taken an inordinate amount of time after you completed your investigation, correct?
If not specifically about an inordinate amount of time, but definitely that the behaviors of the individuals involved continued and did not improve.
Okay. Do you know who Dr. Tony Baez is?
Yes,
How do you know Dr. Tony Baez?
he was a prior board member.
Did he ever assign you to complete any deliverables for him?
Yes,
What were those assignments in 2019?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall the issue of Dr. Baez raising the issue of discrimination against Hispanics at MPS?
Yes, I do.
Okay. How did he do that?
In a one-on-one meeting or conversation.
Do you know where that took place?
Where? I'm sorry.
Yes, where?
It would have been in the office, at the office of accountability official.
So in other words, he came.
What?
Office of accountability
Thank
official.
you.
Are we all speaking a little fast?
Sometimes.
Okay. We'll all work together, slowing things down, okay? Great. So he came to you, and what did you discuss during that meeting?
My recollection is basically a culture that he felt was trying to think of- it was concerned about the culture as it relates to Hispanic employees.
Okay. And what kind of culture are we talking about? Is this a positive culture or a negative culture? Let's start with that. Okay. Is there any other words that he used to describe the culture?
I don't recall, but I'm happy to categorize it as negative.
Okay. Were there any specific points he mentioned?
I recall specifically promotional opportunities.
For Hispanics?
Correct.
Okay. And were there any other races that he was comparing Hispanic promotional opportunities to, for example?
None specifically.
Okay. Did you discuss discrimination against African Americans during that meeting?
I don't recall.
Did you discuss African Americans at all during that meeting?
I don't recall.
Okay. So what do you recall about promotional opportunities, or your discussion about promotional opportunities and a negative culture with Dr. Tony Baez?
The appearance that those did not.
Dr. Mateo hold a role at MPS, if you know?
I don't recall.
Do you believe she was the deputy superintendent at that time?
Could have been.
Okay. Do you understand her to be the deputy superintendent at some point?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand that she's no longer the deputy superintendent?
Yes.
Okay, and that she was replaced by Calvin, succeeded by Calvin Furman, is that right?
I believe that's right.
Okay. But this is the second highest person in MPS management that we're talking about, correct?
Within the administration reporting structure, that's my understanding.
Who would be higher than her outside of the administrative reporting structure?
The board.
Okay. So, but it's fair to say at that time that she was the deputy superintendent, she was the second highest person in the administrative reporting structure, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever talk with her about race discrimination at any time?
I'm going to check this broad anytime.
You can answer the question if, I guess, well, yeah, just answer the question.
I recall her forwarding to me a communication or a statement that she forwarded to my email. This was sometime near or around her departure.
And do you recall the substance of that communication?
I believe she was sharing her perspective on hers. I don't know if it was separation from her role or from the district at that time.
Okay. Do you know whether or not Dr. Tony Baez sent anybody else besides Dr. Garcia-Joven to your office to complain about race discrimination at MPS?
I don't know if any other employees shared with me that they were there at his direction or behest. I don't recall.
Okay. Ben, would it surprise you to learn that Dr. Baez signed a statement saying, after sending Dr. Garcia and others to Mr. Chason, who thanked me for continuing to send Latino staff to his office with their concerns and complaints?
I'm going to check the foundation and also if not in the evidence, this is improper reading of the document that has been presented or authenticated or otherwise for this witness. And I think what he's reading off of the statement from Dr. Baez, which is included in the exhibits, are not timely provided to us.
Right, is that what you're reading off of?
Sure.
Yeah, and I think there's been a ruling on that already, that that's
Right, well, the question here is not whether this is the document or what's in the document. The question is would he be surprised to learn whether or not Dr. Baez says that he sent other Latino staff to Matt Chason's office and that Matt Chason thanked him?
Does that sound accurate? You can answer.
Oh, yes, that sounds accurate.
And that you thanked both parts, that you thanked him and that he sent other complaints to your office?
That sounds accurate.
Okay, thank you. About how many other complainants did he send to your office, do you believe?
I don't know how many complaints he sent.
Okay, about at this time, how many complainants regarding Hispanic or Latino discrimination did you get at that time?
Check what time.
Yeah, what time are we talking about?
The time period in question is 2019, so let's stick with that. The real question is when Tony Baez, it doesn't matter what time I think, it's when Tony Baez brought to you these complaints. So surrounding that time period, so.
Yeah. Can you repeat the question?
She can read it back to the record.
the time period in question is 2019, so let's stick with that. The real question is when Tony Bias, doesn't matter what I think, it's what Tony Bias brought to you, this complaint, so surrounding that time period.
I don't know if other individuals appeared specifically at his behest, but other Hispanic individuals did come to me.
Okay, about how many? Let's ask it another way. Was it more or less than 5?
I want to say less than 5.
Okay. Did you give another number before I cut you off?
I was going to say 2 or 3.
2 or 3, I'm sorry.
And that's inclusive of Mr. Garcia-Joven.
So possibly another 1 or 2. Does that sound?
I believe so.
Okay. Were those employees from the curriculum and instruction area or somewhere else?
One of them had to do with sort of an allocation of certificated staff to schools, generally at the beginning of school when there are teacher vacancies and individuals need to fill those roles in a certificated fashion. The other one, I think, may have just been a more generic, sort of speaking to the culture, being negative towards Hispanics again, is
Okay.
my recollection.
You got it. And how did you investigate those complaints?
Based on the level of formality with which we received them and the comfort level of the individuals to move forward, we basically just took passive receipt. We didn't do any further active investigation of those at that time.
Did you tell those individuals that you weren't doing any further investigation at that time?
I don't recall the conversation I had with them and followed, having taken receipt.
And you said based on the formality. Is that right?
Correct.
What did that mean to you?
The manner in which documents or documents have been shared with our office.
How formal does a complaint have to be before you investigate it?
I think specifically, we look for an individual to request that something be investigated under the policy provisions that are the charge of the office.
Do the complainants in these situations, do they know that?
Let me check more speculation. I don't even know what they know.
Yeah, I mean,
Fine, I'll scratch that. Did you tell them that?
I don't recall.
Do you tell complainants those facts as a general policy?
I don't recall.
Do you believe employees know whether or not, prior to filing a complaint, what they are required to do to be sufficiently formal to have you investigate?
And sorry, it's called speculation. If what employees know.
yeah, I mean,
Sure. What do you tell employees prior to them filing a complaint about what they have to do to be sufficiently formal to have you investigated?
Sure. I think generally we've handled it on a case by case, depending upon how the individual contacts us, and whether or not they're asking to in their ask just that brings them to our attention, or that they're asking specifically that an investigation take place. So based on what's communicated in what's delivered to us, we sort of, I make a judgment call as to whether or not we open an investigation specifically to that or not.
Was there a written policy about that?
No.
So it's only in your private judgment that decision is made?
Correct.
Okay, so you don't inform people what they have to do to satisfy your private judgment ahead of time, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's very possible that people can file complaints after having talked to you, but you just you don't take any action because they're not sufficiently formed, correct?
You can answer.
Based on our receipt and what the ask in the receipt of the information is, we do make a judgment as to whether we open an investigation or not.
So is your answer that it varies?
On a case-by-case basis of how we're contacted.
Okay, did you tell Dr. Garcia-Joven what he was required to do to establish a formal enough complaint for your office?
I believe in our discussion, I asked for his permission that I could follow up on the status of the open investigation.
Why would you need his permission? Excuse
Can
me.
we have the witness just finish his answer?
Of course. Were you finished?
I was going to add that I'd asked his permission to, I was saying I'd asked his permission to follow up, and then encouraged him to continue to reach out based on.
Garcia's fears of retaliation.
No, I did not investigate further because in my judgment, the facts and the circumstances at that time did not present a compelling reason to supersede what was already an open and active investigation into a concern within the HR area.
Okay, and to what extent did his permission or lack of permission affect that decision?
I don't believe that it did impact.
Okay. Do you believe that Dr. Garcia-Joven's complaint was sufficiently formal enough for your office?
Yes.
Why?
He had a specific ask regarding an attempt to assist with appeared to be, at that time, an inordinate amount of length for his concern in HR.
Okay.
And the retaliatory nature of it.
I'm sorry. Why, what relation, how did you understand it to be retaliatory?
I'm gonna object, you didn't say. Sorry,
Go ahead.
Mr. Garcia-Joven had shared with me that he believed, subsequent to his filing his complaint in HR, that the individuals in question were engaging in retaliatory behavior to him.
Okay. But you took steps that influenced your decision, isn't that right?
My inquiries were into whether or not the investigation was still open in HR.
Okay, so as soon as you ascertained that there was an open investigation, you stopped investigating, is that right?
I did not investigate the concern about the behavior of the individuals involved.
But you did investigate the retaliation.
At that point, all I did was check into the status of the investigation.
Okay. What, did you not check into the behavior of the individuals involved because the complaint was insufficiently formal? Or for some other reason?
Sorry, Anthony.
You can answer. Go ahead.
I did not investigate because there was currently an open and active investigation already into the matter.
And that goes for both parts of that decision, is that right? Both the retaliation and the...
Correct.
Okay. But again, Dr. Garcia-Joven was saying that after he had filed the complaint, things had gotten from bad to worse, correct?
If he didn't say those words exactly, that was my interpretation, that things had worsened.
Okay. So you, at this point, you understood that things had worsened because Dr. Garcia-Joven had filed a complaint with ERAD, correct?
I'm gonna object, you say that's what you said, that's what Dr. Garcia-Joven told him. You know, so that's what he.
You can answer the question.
Dr. Garcia-Joven absolutely communicated to me that he felt things had gotten worse.
Okay. And based on that communication, you did nothing further, did not investigate his claim any further with ERAD once you learned that ERAD had an open investigation, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so, in other words, you took no steps to resolve the claim of retaliation by Dr. Garcia-Joven. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And that's only, it's based on your subjective analysis on whether or not to go forward, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And to be clear, nobody from management told you what to do in that decision, correct?
Correct.
And nobody from the board told you what to do on that decision?
That is also correct.
So you made that decision on your own?
Correct.
Okay. When did you tell Dr. Garcia-Joven of that decision?